From a series of seance interviews conducted by Madame Mystere of the Order Athenum, as part of an investigation into the destruction of the elder Sistren of the Bitter Well, so called to differentiate them from the current coven of the same name, related but separate, as summarized by her apprentice, Natalie Devlin. The spirit of Patrick Razorfin arrived when summoned, although it did not tarry long. The ghost of the Salakite was direct, matter-of-fact, and unapologetic.
We gave shelter and refuge to those faithless witches for 500 cycles of the moon. 4 times they asked to renew our bargain, and 4 times we agreed. By the time a 5th renewal became necessary, our patience had run out. They treated our forest as their birthright. As long as we had been their host, they never gave what had been promised. And finally, could not even show the proper humility to ask that we again extend our hospitality. Instead, they simply demanded it. We declined and gave them 3 nights to depart, as is customary. On the 4th night, we took back what was ours. The honor of the Stranded Stone Society was in my trust. For my zeal in upholding it, I make no apologies, and I have no regret.
The spirits of the slain sisters were much harder to produce. Each summoning took 2 or 3 times as long as it should have, and brought barely a scrap of insight for the trouble. Hannibal Gladstone and Greer Lanning cursed the name of the werefolks who felled them, over and over again. Ford DeWint Trueheart could only scream breathlessly until dismissed. Lizette Flanders mournfully intoned, "We should have left. I told her we should have left. She wouldn't listen. She never listened to me." But the old dead sistren Bernadette Pendergast refused to answer any summoning spell whatsoever, nor could she be channeled, or the memory of her existence invoked by means of her descendants. However, in the 7th hour of the night's effort, the candles began to gutter with a strong, chill wind, and the walls of the summoning room began to bleed. The phenomena persisted until Madame Mystere ceased the ritual, at which time a message could be read on the sanguinated walls. "I will have my revenge."
In the decades and centuries since its great tragedy, the city of Salem, Massachusetts has become a sanctuary for the strange, the unusual, and yes, the supernatural. Werewolves, vampires, fairies, mages, and other more esoteric things now walk the streets in relative safety. And when the mortal population gets too curious, they do what any community would do. They form a committee. Welcome to The Chimera, a role-playing adventure podcast. Our campaign this season is called Gallows Hill, and it takes place in our version of the World of Darkness, the setting that encompasses Vampire the Masquerade and all its sibling products. I'm Vin LeBate, and I play 8-Ball, a vampire with mental health issues and an assortment of fake IDs, and joining me this season are...
I'm Braden Lamb, and I play Mew, a mummy cat who's into urban planning and sacred geometry.
I'm Jeffrey Bard, and I play Jack Foxglove, a werewolf shaman who coaches the Salem High School football team, the Salem High Witches.
I'm Ethan Bremner, and I play Mother McCree, an immortal Irish witch and American Civil War veteran.
I'm Kacey Smith, and I play Truly Reynard, an animalistic fairy running from her past, sometimes literally.
And I'm Kelly Weissman Asbruce Jackson, the storyteller.
Now, let's get started.
Slowly, we are grinding our way towards the next conclave of the city of Salem, the next time in the calendar, where the city is due to gather for making collective decisions. And this next one is devoted somewhat by tradition more than statute to being the time where the city reconsiders and reaffirms its existing diplomatic relationships with other communities. So you've been having meetings with various diplomatic emissaries of some of the surrounding and neighboring groups. And I think the next step we said we would cover is there is a moot, a meeting, like a sort of combination religious and social event for the werefolk of the community, everybody who's a member of the Standing Stone Society, and on some level, virtually every one of the Aratha in Salem is at least marginally a member of that group. It's kind of the umbrella organization for all the local changing folk. And that's sort of set to happen before that next meeting of the whole civic government. And that is an opportunity to talk to the remaining diplomatic emissaries, because you've talked to everybody except for the various Aratha groups. So just a reminder, you talked to Jalissa Rosenzweig of the Guardianship of the Quabbin Horror and Dame Ekarine Shadowtail, the Platinate of Worms, Padamet of the Crimson Robe Concilium, and somewhat without planning to, Mother McCree had a conversation with Lila Northwind, the satrap of Springfield. But there's still 3 existing sort of Aratha regions of control that have some relationship to Salem. There's Guamac's Band, which is most of the coast of the U.S. and Canada north of Salem. It's mostly a coastal regional grouping. There's the Black Bear Brotherhood, which is like the inland region north of Salem. And there's the Loyal Confraternity of Isles and Shores, which is basically southern coastal New England, the Cape and Islands, and Long Island. So those groups will have somebody to represent them at this upcoming Moot, at this meeting of the Standing Stone Society. So I think we discussed the whole committee going to that Moot. It's permissible, especially as you're sort of collectively the acting mayor or non-Aratha, to be there for this purpose. So seemed like the next potential step. Are we good with that?
Sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Are there any of these in particular that we might suspect of already being allied with our enemy?
So the Black Bear Brotherhood has just lost territory to the Curious, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he took a bite out of Connecticut.
Took a bite out of Connecticut. He's a vampire. Okay.
There's a lot of biting in these games. A lot of things bite. It was at the expense of Black Bear Brotherhood territory. And it also means that he now has a border with the Loyal Confraternity of Isles and Shores, which he didn't before, right? So Guamac's Band does not share a border with him, but it's all coastal. You can look at this on the map, but it's not necessary for this. So given that, there's not any particular reason, I think, to expect that he has any automatic allies among those 3 groups, and definitely strong reason to suspect that he has at least one natural enemy, that being the Black Bear Brotherhood. The Black Bear Brotherhood is probably the least well organized. Aratha areas of control in general are looser than like kindred areas of control. They tend to be much larger, but they tend not to include any major population centers, because by default, the most likely group to be in control of a major population center are the vampires, just because they cluster around humans. And they're usually pretty good at establishing control through force.
Kelly, we know Vicarious does have some Aratha working with him, right? I think the spying sort of showed that. Is that correct?
Yes, you know that he has some Aratha and at least one abomination, which is both kindred and Aratha.
Do we know where the Aratha that are with him, like where they came from, or we just know that he has some?
I think you just know that he has them, because you haven't really, other than Lila Northwind, there's been no identification as to who. Right? It's more general. Like, I saw some vampires, I saw some werewolves. Not I saw this person, but I could put a name and a history to. Well, Lila Northwind, I think you can probably work out. It's not sort of automatic knowledge, but it's something you can sort of figure out from the stuff. And she was a pack leader in the Black Bear Brotherhood, so that's at least one person who was, again, these Aratha confederations are looser, right? They're sort of like a super group of subgroups. Basically, it's like a pack of packs to some degree.
Super PAC?
There you go.
Oh, too soon.
Citizens United.
But in the same way that I said, like, almost every Aratha in Salem, in Greater Salem, is considered to sort of nominally be a member of the Standing Stone Society. Well, think about that, but an even larger catchment area, even more and even looser than that. And that's the way that most of these Aratha groups operate. They're a loose association of pretty individualized packs for the most part. There are some exceptions, and Fraternity of Isles and Shores might be one of them. It's a little bit more regimented than that. Any other preparatory questions?
Dumb question, but
sure.
We don't have a standing invite for the people who have now been infiltrated, do we? Like, for the just general meeting? Because we did, and we didn't rescind it, did we?
No, you didn't.
Did we mean to?
Wait, which infiltration? What are we talking about?
Springfield.
Yeah, there is an existing diplomatic relationship with Springfield, which I think that Lila pretty directly, at least implied, she considered to still be operative, right?
Right, because I wasn't in a place to deny that, but at the same time, well, okay, let's start with this. Becurious didn't, right? Whatever was going on in Connecticut, that was not something that we were he was not, obviously, he's in absentia. There's no way, right? Right.
There was no official relationship between the city of Salem and the kingdom of the Principality of Hartford. Yes.
Right. But what I'm asking specifically is about Springfield. I was not in any place to tell them they're not invited. Do we have any reason to believe that they don't think they're supposed to come?
We did not follow up.
There you go.
Great.
Read not followed.
Putting that on the list of things we don't know what to do about yet.
It's a long list.
Yeah.
Where's the moot taking place?
The moot will be taking place at the Stranded Stone. The Stranded Stone is a fixture of New England. It's like a big rock that was left behind in the last ice age by the retreating glacier, just stuck in the middle of the Lynn Woods. So are we going to go forward with that?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the last full moon before Beltane, which is when the conclave happens, and that is April 7th. Okay, so you've got like a little bit less than a month to go before the big meeting happens. So here's the way that the moot works / looks. So as I said, the Stranded Stone is just a big, basically boulder that was dropped by a glacier the last time it receded from coastal New England, and is just kind of stuck in the middle of the woods. There's a small clearing around it. In that clearing, on the night of the moot, there's a big bonfire that's made, and basically every pack of Aratha in the area is there by default. The individual pack, or especially individual member, might miss a moot pretty regularly. It's not like every single Aratha is always there for every single one of these things. But it's the last moot before the next conclave, which is significant, and there's at least one out-of-town visitor who's there, so it's probable that pretty much everybody is going to turn out for this thing. You should expect basically all or almost all of the werefolk population of Salem is there for this event. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different packs, right? So that's a significant number of werefolk. Plus, the pack is actually bigger than just the werefolk that are in it. There's sort of these other categories of hangers-on. So it's a big, we're talking about, several dozen folks in attendance here, probably like creeping up towards...
Probably creeping up at 100.
Yeah, it might not actually be a full 100, but with the committee, it's probably in that realm. Yeah.
How frequently are moots held? Is that a monthly thing or something else?
Yeah, there's one per month, but the ones that are closest to the conclaves, which happen 3 times per year, are definitely more important. So, like, it's sort of like an off one, you might expect to see more like 50-ish folks there, maybe as low as the 40s. But on a one that's important like this, it's you're probably closer, as Jeff said, to 100 individuals.
So you said there are other non-Baratha who are kind of part of the community. How common is it for other non-Aratha to be there? Like, we'll probably stand out. I don't know if we'll stand out like the proverbial sore thumb.
Those people are like mostly family, right?
Well,
in like a broad sense or a specific sense?
So there's one obvious family that's incredibly important, of Baratha that's incredibly important to see, right? The Foxglove family is sort of like the most obvious of them. But there are actually several other kind of bloodlines that have changing folk in them that live in and around Salem. There's probably like 1, 2, 3, at least 3 other major families, and maybe 1 or 2 other where you can think of there are multiple examples from.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like non-Aratha at the Moot, they're usually relatives of people who are there.
Yeah. So the Moot is specifically for members of the Standing Stone Society. That's who's invited to it. And then guests of one stripe or another. So everybody who's on the invite list is either Aratha or directly related to, like, they're kinfolk. They're people who are like, they have a sister or a parent or something who's changing folk, by and large.
Or are us.
Or they're specifically guests of the Standing Stone Society, which would cover y'all, other than Jeff, because Jeff is already has his own invitation inherently. Or there's one other person who is not a member of the Standing Stone Society, but is Aratha and is there to represent the loyal confraternity of Isles and Shores, which we'll get into in a moment. So, Jeff, maybe you can talk. This is a good opportunity, I think, to talk a little bit about your pack.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
So Jack's pack is pretty sizable. So we've got sort of the core of the pack. They are the ones who are like true Aratha. They're not just wolf-blooded, but there's Oswald Foxglove, who is younger than Coach, kind of gothy, punky kind of dress. They are is a nephew of Coach, and every once in a while, like especially at the diner, you might see Coach hanging out with Oswald, giving advice. He's kind of a hot-headed guy who is kind of always moving, bouncing around. There is Miranda Sharps. The way she's kind of dressed like like in overalls and a kind of a ratty t-shirt underneath. She's got her hair up kind of messily. There's a lot of like I don't know, like disorder, I would say, about her. You might see her in like a garage somewhere doing some welding. If you've been around town or sort of like in like, I'm trying to think of like the artsy area of Salem. There's Paige Byrne. She's actually a bartender at this sports bar that's kind of down the street from Coach's house. 8-Ball may have hung out with Coach there. A lot of people in town kind of know Paige. She's loquacious, super, super funny lady, and she is also Aratha. And then there is Dr. Benjamin Arcalian, and he is actually a dentist in town. Other people may have met him before. He's pretty straight-laced, straight-edged. He kind of feels pretty tightly wound. And then there's a bunch of other hangers-on who are not Aratha. There's a younger lady named Jane, and a couple of other people who are kind of like, kind of run the gamut of looks and ages. And there's about 10 of them in total. And so that's kind of what they do. But as soon as, if we walk up to the Moot, we park kind of far away, we're going to have to take a hike into the woods. the pack meets Jack there. They're there before Jack, and they're all kind of milling around, waiting around. And then when they see Jack, they all like say hi. Some of them come up and shake his hand. Jack kind of changes a little bit in terms of his bearing. He seems a little bit taller. He seems to talk a little bit louder. He just has a different kind of air to him when he's around these people. So that's Jack's pack.
All right, so I assume the committee is going to go in, sort of travel with the pack at least to get to the Moot. As I said, there's like a small clearing around this big, just hunk of granite sitting in the middle of the woods, and someone has started a fire. The group around that. So I'm just going to go very briefly over the other packs that make up the Standing Stone Society. So the core group of the Standing Stone Society is like always one pack in one of these sets that's kind of in charge of the main locus, the main center of spiritual power, which the Standing Stone is for the Stranded Stone Society. And that's the Stonekeeper's pack. Its alpha is an older werewolf named Winter Poet. And he's unusual in that he has the quality where he can hang out as a man-wolf hybrid without any particular like violence issue. Right? Most werefolk are like, they go hybrid, it's only to do extremely high levels of violence, and they can't really maintain it otherwise. Right? He just kind of hangs out as a wolf man pretty much all the time. He has a completely white pelt, by the way. That's Winter Poet, and he's the head of the Stonekeeper's pack. So they're sort of the pack closest to the fire. They're kind of tending things. They oversee the event of the Moot. They're basically both the officiants, but also kind of the party planners for this event, right? Probably next in terms of prominence is the Foxglove Elders pack. You know, at some level, most of these figures already, because it's Jack's family, the sort of the elder members of Jack's family that make it up. So Fenton is there, Uncle Fenton, the Chief Justice of the Admirable Courts, is there. His sister, Gwendolyn Foxglove, who's the Master of the Crook, she's the head of the
Good Shepherds.
The Good Shepherds, right? She's there. She has the crook with her. She's carrying the symbol of office with her. Her husband is also there. He's the only member of that pack who doesn't have a role in civic government. His name is Victor. He's a tiger. There's not the average for this area is that people are werewolves, but he's a Bastet, so that's sort of worth pointing out. And there's a missing member of the pack because Uncle Nate is one of the people who went with Mayor Espinoza, and so he is still not present. But his wife. Oliver is Gwendolyn's husband's name. Sorry, not Victor. Anyway, I apologize for confusing two NPCs here. I got such a long list. But his wife, Evelyn Foxglove, is there and looking uncomfortable.
Evelyn is looking uncomfortable, or the Foxgloves generally?
Evelyn is looking uncomfortable. You know, her husband's been missing for a good bit of time now, right? And it clearly is wearing on her. She doesn't look happy or comfortable at all. The other packs are the Annisquam pack, which is sort of the region of Gloucester and Cape Ann. It's notable because most of its members are weresharks. The alpha of that pack is Cillian Razorfin. So they're probably next in terms of civic prominence. And then there are three other packs that are probably on somewhat equal footing at the low end of juice in the community. There's the Lake Dwellers pack, which is significant because they're the only pack that has its own locus. They have another center of spiritual power, so lake over to the west of Salem, and they are Jack knows this. It's a well-worn thing at this point. They're kind of constantly trying to shift the center of the Aratha community to their locus versus the Stranded Stone, but it's never worked. It hasn't worked for generations, right? There's sort of this competing area of spiritual power, but no one's buying what they're selling, pretty much. And so they keep showing up to the moots that happen at the Stranded Stone because no one comes to the moose that they plan, right? Basically. So that's the Lake Dwellers pack. The alpha is Thomas Woodbridge. Significant because the Woodbridge family is one of the other families in the area that like has multiple different members that are all Aratha, right? So like it's one of the other sort of Aratha families. The Plum Island pack is the area north of Gloucester, and Plum Island pack is an interesting situation. So this is probably one of the things that's most visually obvious when the committee enters the clearing. The packs are, they overlap and intersect, so it's not like they're totally like every group has their own area and there's like clear distinctions between them. But they're probably the one that has the clearest distinction with it, because the Plum Island pack is made up of one male and one female werewolf, one male and one female werecat, and their alpha is actually not Aratha. There are two packs in this area that have members who are not Aratha, and they're the only one that, very significantly, their alpha isn't Aratha. So there's a figure. There's like, again, one male, one female werewolf, one male, one female werecat, and then there's this figure who's in like these flowing robes, including a hood, and then out from the hood is this enormous carved wooden mask. And the mask is the head of a gigantic raven with its beak very wide open. And then out of the mouth of the raven, there's the face of a wolf. And the wolf also has its jaws open. And out of that mouth, there is a snake coming forward. It's very ornate and elaborate. This is Monica Anhalt. She is a mage, and she's a pretty powerful mage, apparently, because one of her persistent enchantments is that Aratha treat her like she's Aratha, even though they know she's not. So, like, Jeff, when your character looks at her, you understand intellectually, this is a human. She is not changing folk, although she has the magical power to transform her body. So in some sense, like, she can be an animal if she wants to be. You know that she doesn't belong here, except you can't help treating her like she belongs here.
Right. It's like just pure instinct takes over. And it's like,
like her pheromones are all right. Like her spirit tags are all right, except that intellectually you know that it's not supposed to be like that.
I hate her, but I love her.
Yeah, exactly. That is basically the overall situation of Monica Anhalt and the entire Aratha community. She, like, the other members of her pack are deferential to her to like a really frightening degree. There's some question about if they're all enchanted or something, but no one can do anything about it because she has something about her that makes her automatically a member of the society, even though she's not supposed to be.
Does she have like renown and stuff? Or
oh yeah, no, she's like, if you were going to get technical about it, she's definitely the most prominent alpha in the community after Fenton. And it's close.
Wow.
But she knows this. If she tried to make a move to become the leader of the sept, for instance, right? She made a move to try and replace Winter Poet. Probably something would snap, right? It's like she's able to she enjoys a place of high prestige but low authority. And that's probably as far as she can go without having some kind of civil war on her hands.
Gotcha.
She's also a member of civic government. She's a legate, which means that has some technical responsibility for kind of overseeing her area of the map outside of the city limits.
Now, does she have influence on outsiders perceiving her place in it?
No, it's usually like, what is this like wizard in a mask here with all these werewolves, right? She just looks complete. It only affects other Aratha and Aratha like kinfolk and stuff.
Okay,
you'd have to belong there already to have this effect influence you at all.
Okay.
And then the last pack to just mention is the Sin City pack. Their concentration is in Lynn, and they are the other pack that has non-Aratha members. So there's one werewolf, one werecat, one were-crocodile, a mage, and a zombie.
A what?
And those two. So like a zombie, like a revenant, like a body that's come back from the dead. He's not a vampire because he doesn't drink blood. He's like kind of rotten, not like obviously actively decaying, but like you look at him like he doesn't really look right.
I guess my question is that a thing that we have a lot of context for?
Yeah, it's unusual, but it's not unheard of. Partially because he's a member of the community, right? This is Dead Oscar, is what everybody calls him.
Fair.
The Sin City Pack is very punkish. A lot of leather and chains. They are closely affiliated with the group of kindred who really run the Lynn area, who are the Scorpion Eaters Motorcycle Club. Most of them have, like, they're not members of the motorcycle club, and they aren't a separate motorcycle club themselves, but they do all ride bikes. So, like, it's definitely some of that sort of punk bike gang aesthetic thing going on with the Sin City Pack. They're definitely kind of the most marginal, partially because they're like kind of crust punks. They don't have any elders in the group, and they don't have any familial connections, and two of them aren't even Aratha, but they are still an accepted pack and a member of the Sept. So that covers broadly all of the major groupings. The Moot is going to involve some amount of singing and dancing and ritual, but also a lot of long periods of just kind of schmoozing, eating, drinking together. I mean, it is both religious observance and party, so that within that, there's lots of opportunities to talk with any NPC you're interested in seeking out. But one other thing I should highlight is that with the Foxglove Elders Pack, there is the only out-of-town guest that is here tonight, and that is Wade Buskirk, who's kind of a middle-aged werewolf. He's very well-dressed. There's a little bit of a upper-class aesthetic to the Foxglove Elders Pack anyways, and he's a couple notches above that. He's probably wearing an ascot, when I think about it. And he, technically, Jeff, he's related to Coach because his sister is Evelyn Foxglove. So his sister is married to one of Coach's uncles.
Right. Okay.
And he's here to represent the loyal confraternity of Isles and Shores. He's the southern sort of gentlemanly Aratha control area around coastal Connecticut and the Cape and Islands and Long Island.
And is there one of these guys is Black Bear Brotherhood, or are they not showing up? Or
so the Black Bear Brotherhood and Blomix Band are not really organized enough that they always send somebody from outside the community, but they have internal advocates. So Cillian Razorfin, who's the alpha of the Anasquam Pack, he sort of speaks for Blomix Band because he would actually like to see the community align more with their contingent. And Thomas Woodbridge, who's the alpha of the Lake Dwellers Pack, speaks for the Black Bear Brotherhood because he'd like to see them align. He'd like to see the community align more with the Black Bear Brotherhood. So they had sort of internal people who represent them.
Gotcha. All right, so I'm going to say that some of my pack members have coolers and stuff that they brought.
Mm-hmm.
They set them down. There's probably some card tables set up kind of near the fire. They set them down, open them up. One's got a bunch of beer in it. One's got room temperature steaks at this point, or just pieces of meat, not really steaks, right? They're not well cut, but they're kind of there in that cooler, but they're all shrink wrapped and safe. And
is this the same type of meat that was served at the late night barbecue that we all attended? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was curious.
And then Coach said, so just make yourselves comfortable. There's a lot of people here. If you want me to introduce you to anybody, just let me know. And Coach grabs a beer, kind of holds one up for anybody. Anybody want one?
8-Ball definitely looks uncomfortable in this situation. She's wearing most of what she normally wears, like short skirt, fishnets, hacked up t-shirt. But instead of wearing a leather jacket, she's wearing like a big overcoat with what she's fairly sure is a faux fur lining. And is just kind of sticking to Jack's shadow most of the time. Like, there's definitely people she'll like wave to or acknowledge and like is friendly with outside of this context. But by and large, this situation is more intimidating than she's used to.
This is ostensibly in the forest.
Yeah.
Something you all have noticed is in the woods, Mother McCree seems to be more free and loose with her powers. Not in a obvious way, but in a more subtle way. She always moves in a way that belies her age, but when she's in the forest, she moves in ways that belies her humanity. She moves in ways that just don't seem possible. You blink and she's kind of somewhere else. Not like completely somewhere else, but somewhere where you're like, she couldn't have possibly moved from there to there by taking a step.
Like walks behind a tree and then emerges behind a different tree.
Exactly that kind of thing.
Cool.
And in this setting in particular, she'll let you know that she is riding point on checking out the perimeter of this location, which seems odd because she's not actually hanging out the perimeter. She's in the midst of it, but she's informed you that she is definitely keeping her eye on the perimeter.
Jack sees that 8-Ball's uncomfortable and kind of like he was going to throw a beer to somebody, but nobody wanted one. So he kind of like puts it down a little bit and then walks over to, or I guess since 8-Ball's in the shadow, kind of pats 8-Ball on the shoulder and kind of hands her one personally, like, drink up. It'll make you feel better. Don't worry. This is really going to be a lot of fun. Trust me.
Okay.
And like there is sort of like a wildness to the mood. You kind of can feel it underneath everything, right? Like right now, people are just kind of milling about, kind of getting comfortable, but there's like an energy there that's kind of starting to build that I think everybody can probably feel. Jack is going to go to Paige. Paige is the bartender pack member. She's already talking to people. She's laughing. There are people like outside the pack that are kind of hanging out with her. And he asks Paige, hey, Paige, can you go talk to Wade? Give me a sense of kind of how he's feeling, loosen him up a little bit. I'm going to want to talk to him later. And then he goes, let's see, I think Cillian's probably the right person to talk to right now. You guys want to meet Cillian? He's an interesting fella.
Sure.
Quick reminder on who that was.
So Cillian Razorfin is a wereshark, and he is the alpha of the Annisquam pack. He advocates for Guamic's band in terms of diplomatic relationships. He's also a shepherd.
Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of avoiding this, but can we review where the weresharks are vis-a-vis the community, vis-a-vis the fact that they slaughtered the entire old cistern?
Yeah, so he's descended from the person who led the sept at that point.
Okay.
Right? That's the Razorfin family.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the other Aratha families in the area and the only wereshark family in the area. So he's a direct descendant of, I forget the name of which Razorfin that was, but the guy who led it. I think that it's fair to say that diminished the standing of his family in terms of like no Razorfin has risen above Pack Alpha. Like probably no prospect of his ever becoming like warden, for instance. But still influential, especially in the Gloucester, Cape Ann area. Basically, that it's thought of as being a somewhat dark time because it was intra-community violence, but it's also resolved because that whole, that branch of the cistern doesn't exist anymore. There's no one to carry that grudge from an official perspective. I don't know what Mother McCree feels about it, but
right. I mean, that's essentially what I was going for because I'm trying to find, like if anyone is going to hold anything in the form of a grudge, it would be Mother McCree and the new cistern.
Mm-hmm.
And, they never really truly resolved it, right? I mean, it was just, it happened. They were all killed. The community sort of moved on. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fair. It was definitely maintained at the time that, they felt they were in the right, that it was an existential conflict. And so they would say at some level it was self-defense, right? And there's no one to really adjudicate that because there's no natural constituency to press the issue.
Okay.
But as I said, definitely in general, there's a general sense of let's not let the razor fins be in charge of anything again. Right. When they get to be really in charge of stuff, violent shit happens. So it's useful to have them around, and that, sometimes we need violence done, but let's not put them into that level of leadership again.
Okay.
So Jack kind of leads everybody over to Cillian.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is the whole pack, right? He's kind of sent the pack out to kind of glad hand people and kind of meet up, and he's kind of assigning the right people to the right people so that they, nothing's going to be awkward or uncomfortable. He kind of has a good eye for, matching people up and kind of understanding where people are in respect to the sept as a whole. So he walks up to Cillian, has his hand out with a beer, and says, "Hey, Cillian, good to see you. Been a while. What you been up to?"
So Cillian is a little ways away from the bonfire at this point. The bonfire was set up and lit and actually sort of blessed. There was an opening ritual some rituals are everybody participates in them, and some rituals are a particular group conducts them and everybody kind of gives that space to happen. So the bonfire opens with a ritual conducted by the stone keepers. So that pack that's kind of in charge of the sept. And it's one of those, they do it and everybody else just watches. So that's already taken place. The bonfire is blessed in the way that it needs to be blessed. And now they've kind of moved around and that leadership group is kind of circulating. And some of the younger members of the Anisquam and the Sin City packs are kind of taking turns daring each other to jump in and out of the bonfire. That's sort of the thing that often happens, especially among younger pack members at these things. So they're joking around and pushing people in, pulling them out. Someone's lit dead Oscar on fire as a joke. That usually happens at these things. And Cillian is not really involved in that level of horseplay because he's a little bit above that, but he's nearby and kind of watching the other members of his pack participate in it. So that's what's happening when you go to Freedom. Cillian has dark black hair, and he actually has black eyes. He has shark eyes, basically, even in human form.
Like a doll's eyes.
Yeah.
And he says, he takes the beer happily, and he takes the beer, he says...
Say, Narragansett.
And says, been all right. Seems like you've been pretty busy.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. I'm one of the mayor, which is neat. Never been a mayor before.
He maintains eye contact. He's clearly listening to you. This is not disrespectful at all that he's multitasking. But while he's listening, maintaining eye contact, he puts the bottom of the beer in his mouth and bites into it, and then pulls he shotguns it with his teeth, basically. Sucks it down. Again, maintaining eye contact the whole time. Definitely still paying attention to you, listening to what you're saying.
And he so I don't know if you want to meet the rest of the mayor, but we've got Mew and Amal over there. This is Truly and 8-Ball. You might have seen 8-Ball around.
Hey, man.
And then that grumpy old lady over there is Mother McCree. But yeah, we're the mayor now. It's been a lot of fun.
He's a nod and a grunt greeting for pretty much everybody, except Mother McCree, who he gives almost a bow. Not as much deference as this guy usually shows anybody, pretty much, but definitely more so than the other members of the committee.
And I should clarify that Mother McCree is doing her typical thing where she's actually not in the circle of this communication, but she's in the perimeter of it so that it wouldn't be weird for him to do that. But it is weird how she reacts as though she is in the circle. She'll acknowledge his bow.
But anyways, what you been up to? You still in touch with Guamic's band?
Of course, try to go to one of their moots at least twice a year, stay connected, stay in contact. They're still ready to accept our sept as a division of their own whenever we want to do that. It'd be wise to consider they've got a lot of good fighters up there.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because the fighters might be what we need to talk about here. Maybe I don't know if you've heard what's going down in Connecticut.
I heard that some of the black bears got rolled like a bunch of chumps.
Yeah, don't tell them that. But yeah,
he picks up his voice and says, "I don't care who hears it." It's not a keeping the peace kind of dude.
Not surprised. But there's something coming, right? There's something coming on the water, and I think we need to all be prepared for it. So maybe that's something we talk about, right? Rolling them in would be a smart thing to do, and their teeth are many, and their bite is something to fear. I think even Pecurious might be a little bit worried about that. But did you hear? They have an abomination.
Cillian is not particularly tall, but he seems suddenly taller when he hears that. His body language shifts. And Jack knows him well enough to not be worried about this probably, but it's definitely a body language shift that Jack recognizes as, oh, it's time to do violence now, right? Like that's,
maybe not now.
They have an abomination. Pecurious has an abomination. He crushes the empty can. Okay, so when do we roll out?
Well, we got to talk to people first, right? That's what we got to do first. We got to make sure everybody's on board, and we got to be smart about this because Pecurious is a tough motherfucker. He is not 8 Ball.
Yeah, 8 Ball.
It's all about Pecurious.
8 Ball is actually just about to step up. She sort of puts a hand on Jack's arm. So the thing about Pecurious, aside from the fact that he's wicked fucking old and nasty in just a basic vampire sense, is that he's been doing a lot of stuff that we don't entirely have tabs on. Like the abomination thing, we just found out about a week ago. And so before we start rolling, we want to figure out what he's got so that we know in which directions the rolling is going to have to happen. So we're currently talking to all the other neighbors on that side. They're keeping their eyes open. We're keeping our eyes open to see what we're dealing with. And we're working to make sure that everyone, including y'all and Guamic's band and the Black Bears and the Isles and Shores and everybody is on the same page so that when we need to break heads open, we're all doing it at the same time.
Well, the Black Bears don't have the sand for something like this, but if we're talking about war, like real war, with Pecurious fucking Cartley, I bet we could get Guamic himself down here, and that would really fuck shit up. So you just let me know.
She snaps her fingers and points.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. I mean, it's not just, he's going to try to take us apart one by one, right? He's going to keep rolling through the Black Bears. He's going to keep rolling through, I don't know, those weird mage guys. He's not going to, we need to act like a pack, right? We need to act like a pack of packs. And that's the kind of organization we're going to need to do in order to have a chance against him. So that's why we got to keep talking to people. We got to keep riling people up. We got to keep people focused on the problem. Can't let people go off half-cocked. We saw what happened to the mayor. So we need to make sure we're smarter than all of them.
All right. We'll keep our teeth clean and be ready.
All right. Good seeing you, Cillian. Don't go jumping through any fires. We're too old for that shit. I see it in your eye.
He said. So at this point, he turns and looks kind of back at the back of the fire, and two of his pack mates have Venom Spitter, who's the were snake in the Sin City pack. They got him by the arms and they're making him eat hot coals. All right. You made your point. Break it up, kids. Sort of reining them in a little bit.
Hey, Kelly?
Yeah.
Can I make an Auspex roll?
Sure. What do you want to do? What is the goal of this Auspex roll?
So this version of level 1 Auspex is Beast Hackles, which is essentially kind of it pierces Obfuscate and anything else that you think would fall into that category. And then B, it lets you sense certain like heightened emotional states, like essentially you get 1 or possibly 2 if the roll goes well, questions about like who wants to start violence or who's afraid or like who's freaking out.
It applies generally, or you need to target it?
It applies to like the sample question, like who here is most likely to give me what I want.
Like an area test. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to roll for that. That's Wits, Empathy, Auspex. That is 2.
Okay. So that's good enough for at least one question, right?
Yeah. And I think I just want to know if anyone here feels like they're like, honestly, if anyone here is a spy / traitor, like if anyone has that kind of on edge energy.
Well, as mentioned, Evelyn Foxglove is visibly on edge, right? Now, doesn't necessarily mean that she's a spy or a traitor, but if you're looking to just measure free-floating anxiety around you, she's at the top of the list. Other than that, there's like a big nope bubble around Monica Anhalt, the mage with the crazy mask, right? Like, sort of like, you're going to have to put in more time than that if you want to know anything about me, kid, kind of sign over her head.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not the same type of anxiety, but heavy, like, worry, weight of the world from Winter Poet, who's he's the warden and the keeper of the door. He's like the overall leader of the sect. That older wolf. Yeah, just like weight, just like burden. Anybody else? That's pretty good summary of all the people with like sort of extreme emotional states in the anxiety direction.
Okay.
So the other person who is extremely on edge would be Truly, who hates this so much. She went into this knowing that she was going to hate it, but she she is dressed a little differently. Normally she's in somewhat flowy clothes. She's got a little bit of a kind of like bohemian thrift store deal going on most of the time. When she came here, she's in, black leggings, a black sweater, tennis shoes. Normally her hair's down, it's tied back. She has a small flask tucked into her, pocket that she's taking out and taking nips from every so often, and has just been kind of being very watchful. But I mean, she hasn't said a word since they've gotten here, except for to, nod or say, hey, and is kind of keeping in this space where she's essentially just trying to find the spot that's like furthest away from everyone. And then as everyone shifts, she'll shift a little to kind of maintain whatever kind of distance she can. Yeah, you probably would get that as well since you're looking.
I don't want to cut you off in, but I want to come back to Truly in a second here. So any other questions you want to resolve from this power usage? I want to make sure you get your effect.
No, I think that mostly covers it, aside from obviously if someone is invisible.
Yes. No invisible. Nope. Nobody's invisible.
Don't like how you answered that.
You might have a little trouble pegging Mew for a little while. He's got his night creature on, at least at the meet and greet stage.
Yeah, I think 8-Ball generally has Mew marked with an asterisk in most categories.
But after doing some polite milling about, Mew and Amal meet back up again and make a beeline for Winter Poet to just have a general meeting of the wardens.
Cool.
Amal is dressed to the nines, He and Mew are each wearing what Mew has decided is the badge of office for the warden of Harmony Grove, which is yew branches. Mew has a little wreath as a collar, and Amal has basically an entire flowing boa of yew branches on top of some very chic, flowing Met Gala kind of clothes.
Cool. Remind me of what Night Creature does. Night Creature shows Mew, like, if somebody's
unclean,
like a miscreant by a certain unclean.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're using morality in this,
right?
But it gauges morality if it's like low morality or no, or if somebody has indulged their vice during this scene. I'm sure.
Yeah, this is a spicy room.
Yeah.
But also it makes him harder to detect in darkness.
So I'm just going to say, in general, I'll let you know if anything works at all on Monica Anhalt. She's a special case, so like kind of get the same like vacuum of active lacuna of information around her.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of people indulging their vices in that sense, so that's probably going to pop for a bunch of them. Probably, it's fair to say, the whole Sin City pack puts off like a generally dirtier vibe through this vision than everybody else. And anything else going to specifically trigger? No, I don't think anything else is going to specifically trigger. No one's like actively engaged in something that offends the antediluvian gods of justice I can think of right now. Okay, Ethan, you had a question.
No, I'm just going to give an overview of what I'm doing in relation to what 8-Ball was doing. 8-Ball is kind of ascertaining the demeanor of the people who are here. Mother McCree is discerning anyone who, trying to pick out anyone who should not be here and keeping relative surveillance on anyone who shouldn't be here, which includes the concept of invisible people as well, but also includes like at some point before this, she sat down with Jack and just kind of got an overview of like, oh, who's coming? And it's this person, these people. And she has a really strong sense of who belongs and who does not belong. And so far, everyone you've listed are the kinds of people she expected, but she is constantly, keeping her sight, her concepts, her perception on the perimeter of the event, making sure that no one who doesn't belong here arrives. And if you'd like me to roll on any of that, I can do that, but it is certainly extra, it is magical sensory.
So just to make sure that I'm being clear, because it's information your character would have, this is a locus, right? This place of spiritual power. It's centered on the stranded stone.
And when I say people, I don't mean she can't discern any spiritual energy or anything like that that she couldn't discern. I'm talking about life
and
as we understand it.
Yep.
And spatial things, if that is possible.
There's a spatial distortion that's caused by the spiritual power of this location. Like it's why like random humans don't trip over this rock all the time. Right. That's not it. That's you're familiar with that.
That is a magic she is well familiar with.
Exactly. The same basic principle as the witch arts applies to this space. Other than that, she's not sensing anybody who's like, anybody invisible, anybody who's like specifically not supposed to be here is present, or people lurking at the periphery, that kind of stuff. That's not happening so far.
Okay.
Brayden, you said Mew wants to go talk to Winter Poet, but first I want to cover something with Truly. So Truly is kind of intentionally at the periphery of things, right? That's the
correct.
Not actively separated from the group, but out at the edge of where the group is, wherever the group is. Right?
Yeah, pretty much as far as she can get away with being without reaching the point where she's now completely separated herself. So she's kind of pulling a Mother McCree, but without the extrasensory perception.
So while she is at the edge of this, and while she's pretty confident that she's doing a good job of keeping the group, the overall whole group, it's like 100-ish people in her range of vision, right? Trying to make sure that she's got a handle on where everybody is. She missed something because she's acutely aware that there's somebody behind her left shoulder, and a woman's voice, slightly older woman, says, "You feel out of place here."
So she turns around pretty sharply.
Okay, so that's Monica Anhalt. That's the mage in the weird mask. She has a glass of white wine in her right hand, and it's very out of place, right? Like everybody else is drinking beer or like weirder shit than that, right? And
it's the most out of place thing about her. Not the fact that she's a mage, not the fact that there's an aura around her, but the fact that she's drinking white wine in a kegger.
She got a glass here in one piece.
Right, it's not in a solo cup.
She says this, and while she's like, seeing if you reply or waiting for a reply, she doesn't seem disturbed by the fact that Truly probably wheeled around pretty dramatically. The snake, so like I said, right, raven's head with a wolf's head coming out of it and the snake coming out of the wolf's head. The snake, still the whole thing is made out of wood, doesn't stop being made out of wood. The snake moves and dips into the glass to drink from the glass.
Yeah, you got me. You don't, though.
Well, I have practice at these things, dear. But you should feel at peace. As much as you are prey and they are predators, you're not the prey tonight. Relax.
I'm working on it.
Really, truly, this is probably the safest place you could be in all of Salem.
Why is that?
Well, even if the Black Hand were to come here, he'd have to go through all of these to get to you.
That's, have we met before? It's hard. Yeah, I don't think I would have remembered the snake, but I'm guessing this is like, the prom clothes, so.
She extends her left hand. We haven't been officially introduced. Legate Monica Anhalt. It's good to meet you, 1/5 of the mayor.
Huh. Yeah, well, I guess you already know my name, but hello, Legate Monica Anhalt. She takes the hand in a cursory handshake, has a small swallow from her flask.
Mm-hmm.
So, can I ask, like, why this thing you do?
I've always felt more comfortable among the changing folk. Other magi, they're all head and no heart. These people are all heart and sometimes no head, but it's just more of a natural vibe for me. And of course, she gestures over towards the other members of her pack who are not actually near her, right? So that as I mentioned, there's 4 other members of the Plum Island pack: a male werewolf, a female werewolf, a male werecat, and a female werecat. She gestures over towards them, and they're just kind of standing there and like looking in her direction, but not particularly expectantly. One of them has an ice bucket that has her bottle of white wine in it, and they're just kind of like standing there, like they're waiting for her to come back, but not impatiently.
Yeah, whole lot of heart there.
What can I say? They love me.
Well, it was sure an experience talking to you.
Hang on. At this point, Coach kind of appears out of nowhere while they're talking, and he basically half steps in front of Truly, between Truly and what's her name? Monica. So it's just like one beefy leg in front of Truly, and kind of smiles at Monica and says, "Monica, what are you doing here?"
Oh, I'm always here, Jackson. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. I see you've met my friend here. I hope things are going well.
Oh, she's just darling. You know, you two could raise some very handsome children together.
At this, like, so Jack was ready to be a badass. But that has completely, like, he doesn't know what to do now. He's forgotten how to be a badass.
You just got shipped.
Kind of looks at Truly, like, kind of shrugs. No, you.
Don't tempt me.
And that actually makes Truly just like burst out laughing. And she just kind of like shoulder bumps Jack and grins at Monica and says, "Yeah, all right. Well, we'll see you around, creepy lady. Enjoy your weird pack and your fun mask, and you have a nice night."
She continues to circulate, and it's pretty clear that like she's making everybody she talks to roughly equally uncomfortable.
There's a reason she has to use magic to make people like her.
Yeah.
Is that technically an abomination or not? I'm trying to find out.
No. She's just a mage. She has some shapeshifting.
No. I'm saying what she's referring to.
Would that be an abomination? Yeah. No.
So Truly is a changeling, and changeling is a spirit?
Yeah, it's kind of a piece of the dreaming that was, it's weird. So there are like true fae that are kind of they're kind of beings, but they're not really necessarily beings. They can also be landscapes but they're components of the dreaming. And changelings are basically pieces of fae that kind of break off and gain their own awareness and independence separate from the greater dream that they were a part of. And they have a means to exist in the what's the Tellurian? What's the term for the regular world?
The Tellurian, yeah.
Yeah, the Tellurian world, where other spirits, if they tried to do that, would dissipate.
Really, of the big four, I think it's fair to say that Aratha and Faye probably are the most similar at like a cosmological level, like what is this kind of thing? Yeah, I think that's probably, doesn't mean that I'm not making a case one way or the other, but it's probably the least weird pairing.
It's not considered a terrifying nightmare by all involved.
Fair enough. Okay.
So let's go to Mew. You wanted to go talk to Leader Poet, right?
Oh, sure. Just kind of casually talking about, locus upkeep, trying to work in some suggestions for how the divine geometry could be sort of optimized in this area. Like I can see you have a sight line to that hilltop over there. If there was some sort of light or some kind of translucent stone that you could place between the top of this rock and that hill, that could really draw in more spiritual power and etc.
Okay.
And he gradually comes around to asking how the mood is around here. Has word spread about Bicurious?
So I think when you come to see Winter Poet, again, he's hanging out as a werewolf, right? He's seated on the ground, and another member of his pack, Cassandra Sharps, parenthetically older sister to a member of Jess' pack, is weaving, what is she? She's weaving some ivy into his pout, right? So in the area of the head, right? Not exactly his hair, because he's a wolf right now. So she's doing that, and like other people are sort of cycling up to him and exchanging words, and so Mew's able to approach. At that point, he's a little closer to the ground because he's seated, so it's a little bit easier for me to talk directly to him if Mew's on the ground as opposed to being like held up by a maul.
Oh, well, no, they're together. Amal is holding him up.
Got it. Okay. All right. He'll gesture for Amal to sit if he would like. Other than that, he's very stoic in listening. He nods along at times in a way that indicates attention without any commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually you reach as a question. And the question is,
how is the mood around here? How are the packs taking the news of the Curious's incursion?
We worry, of course, for the well-being of our mayor, your loyal citizens of Salem. And we have deep concern as well for Nathaniel, hoping for his safe return.
As are we. But if the worst has occurred, we will need to be ready for action.
The predator is strong, the people of the Standing Stone. If it becomes necessary to defend our home, we are ready to do it with tooth and claw. He's very matter-of-fact about it. Both, there's not a lot of zest in his speech, I guess is what I'm trying to get across.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to ask or establish, you?
Yeah, he says, well, any information you have about their movements, their plans would be invaluable to Greater Salem and the region in general.
We take responsibility for the range of all the packs within the Sept, and certainly will warn the proper authorities if we perceive any threat within the dominions of Salem. Beyond that boundary, I cannot say.
Well then, I'll bid you a good evening, and just a final suggestion that the time may come to shed the moss from this stone.
So, the woman who is weaving the ivy into Winter Poet's hair, Cassandra, she doesn't stop what she's doing. She's still focused on that task. But she says, I have heard it said tonight that there is an abomination in the ranks of the curious. Is this true?
This is, although some among us call it a chimera.
Only one.
He's determined that this terminology is going to catch on.
You're already using that word for like 3 other things.
She says, that is not the correct use of that term. But if it is the case, it will counsel us to war. She says this very clearly, not to me, but to Winter Poet. Winter Poet sighs, says, if it is the case, the litany is clear, and we will do what must be done.
That's it this week for The Chimera. Our theme music this season is Down Among the Dead Men, performed by Adrienne Howard, Emily Peterson, and Dirk I. Tiede. For information on other music used in this episode, check the show notes. You can support The Chimera by going to patreon.com/chimerapod. Patrons at any amount get access to behind-the-scenes setting and system info, art polls, and exclusive side games and one-shots. You can also find us online at thechimera.space or on Twitter and Facebook at ChimeraPod. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode, so until then, thanks for listening.